So we wanted to try something different here this year, and we are teaming up with the Philadelphia Fed, which is also having a conference on financial technology. And we wanted to try to do a kind of a joint session on blockchain. So you can sort of see some of the Philadelphia Fed participants there dressed better than we are. And we decided, to make this a little bit of a contest, between Team DC and Team Philadelphia to talk about sort of different aspects of blockchains to see which one is, sort of pushes the conversation a little bit further. And so I have with me here in Washington, DC, Patrick Merck, the founder and CEO of Surus, and Priscilla Wilkins from the Bank for International Settlements, sort of a very interdisciplinary team in DC. Go DC, go DC. All right, and I'll hand it off to Julapa.
So on the Philly team, we have Jeff Barnard from Oracle, Hanna Halaburda from NYU Stern ComSci at the business school, and Bob Bench, who used to help us think about how to make CBDC work in the US. Well, used to be with the Fed and working with MIT. Now he has his own company, and he's building his own company he doesn't need a blockchain, right? So that's why you're here. Okay, so we will start with the first question. So we heard so much this morning about how blockchain DeFi actually is the future of finance, of infrastructure in finance. Do you believe that? Do you feel that blockchain is needed? And some believe that blockchain actually is a failed technology because we have seen some of the things that we have achieved without actually using blockchain. What do you think would be the main criteria, criticism of this blockchain so far? And would it work? Hanna, you start.
So I can start. So a lot of blockchain projects promise groundbreaking changes in decentralization, transparency, and trust, but there's a lot of overpromising going on. It turns out that outside of the application of cryptocurrencies, when you want to go outside, decentralization is really difficult to achieve technologically, if not impossible. And where it is possible to achieve, it's very expensive to have decentralized systems. And also there are very strong re-centralization economic forces. So that lead back to creating intermediaries, strong intermediaries that now are anonymous because of the permissionless systems. So this is why I think that this is why we should be cautious about blockchain technology.
Is it cheaper? Is it more efficient? It's scalable?
It's difficult to scale. If we are thinking about permissionless blockchains, they are difficult to scale in a decentralized way. When we're thinking about scaling technologies like L2s, they turn out to be very centralized, but without accountability. And it's difficult to bring in regulation and accountability because we sometimes do not know who the people running those L2s are. And it's not cheaper if it's fully decentralized.
Who wants to go first? You? Yeah, Jeff.
Okay, so you've got the real Oracle finally up in front of you. My experience with implementing CBDCs, or I should say my team for the Bank of Philippines, is we have a blockchain and it is Hyperledger and I've seen a lot of problems. Hacking, wallets. So my group is mission critical, non-stop high availability, and we've never ever had a security breach. So you can imagine what our team said when we started getting into the blockchain space. So we kept quiet, we looked at the blockchain, we looked at all the risks, we looked at the problem with a bridge, the lack of getting over 3,000 TPS, and we said, we'll build this into the database kernel. So you can imagine the amount of engineering that Oracle Corporation has had to do in the database to solve the blockchain problems, to incorporate it. It's not about one or two blockchains, it's about thousands of blockchains. And you heard from Franklin Templeton, Sandy, where she said, and we have a database with all our KYC AML. So you know today that going off chains to get all your compliance documents, all this kind of stuff, but wallet draining, there's a lot of risks. So from Oracle's viewpoint, we have worked with central banks and the leading commercial banks. We're involved in pretty much all the top blockchain projects, and we're trying to take it to the mission critical layer, which is non-stop with all the privacy, all the security, all the reliability, and removing the barrier of 2/3 in this space, which is the reg tech, subtech for embedded supervision from there. So we do think we've got a way forward, but that's Oracle corporations. And we think that the blockchain, the most thing that's affecting it the most is AI. AI is growing exponentially from my office in Silicon Valley. You just know about the Gen AI stuff with the human. You've not seen the stuff with no one in it. And that is just redefining. So the key area of subtech, regtech requires AI from there. So our industry is growing and evolved. So it's not, for mine, I've got no problem with blockchains, our fixed blockchain, which passes the test. But my issue is with really the embedded supervision.
Bob?
Okay.
Yeah, Chris. Congrats getting Pat Merck in the suit. Well done.
I know.
So yeah, I think. So I think with blockchain, it's I've been in the space for a while, and then I try to put the rubber against the road at the Fed to understand, does this serve the purpose for the Federal Reserve in a research capacity, to be sure. And so crypto generally has done several great things. It's gotten millions of people around the world getting smarter in software. It's gotten millions of people around the world getting smarter in hardware. And it's gotten millions of people in the world to better understand, can you move value differently through disintermediated processes? These are all very good things. It is not a fit for purpose for every application, particularly when trust is involved. The key challenge here is when you have a Byzantine fault-tolerant network that orders transactions in blocks through a global ordering, which is how I define a blockchain, you have upper bounds on throughput and you have lower bounds on latency. It makes it very hard to move transactions quickly. It makes it very expensive to move transactions quickly, and latency is a problem. If you are dealing with trust, so if you are a commercial bank dealing with money multiplication or fractional reserve banking, if you will, or you are a central bank, you are dealing with trust at the nature and your core of your system. As a result, you are dealing in a trusted environment, and Byzantine fault tolerance is not necessary, nor is a global order of transactions. If you are building a hypothetical global currency that is sovereignless and censorship resistant like Bitcoin, it is spot on, perfect design, and why Bitcoin's been so successful. For everything else, you really need to ask the question, can this be done with an Oracle Postgres database? And that needs to be asked if you're an enterprise. Anytime someone comes to you with blockchain, is can this be done with Oracle Postgres? And you really need to prove otherwise, unless it's just a way to sell a token. And that needs to be the conversation every single time. If you need Byzantine fault tolerance because there is an absence of trust, it makes sense. But you really need to prove otherwise that it doesn't need an Oracle Postgres database.
All right. Well, I'm going to then try to summarize what we've just heard for Team DC. I mean, blockchains suck, except for Bitcoin, and are not as effective as they need to be. Discuss. I guess we'll start off with the guy who's never in a suit, Patrick.
Well, I agree with everyone in Philadelphia that Bitcoin is amazing. So let me just put it out there first and foremost. And secondly, I dressed in a suit because I can't disappoint Julapa. That's like, and you too, Chris. So there's absolutely like a place for blockchain technology and decentralized technologies like blockchain. They are often more expensive. They often are less efficient. But you take that trade-off to secure other things, autonomy, privacy, those types of concepts. So whether that trade-off makes sense, I agree with Bob's last point. You have to just assess that on a case-by-case basis for whatever you're building. However, I would say that like, is the blockchain a failure? I mean, clearly no, right? We can just look at this room and like ask how many people are involved in some way in blockchain technology and emerging technologies like that. I was just down the street at another conference with builders, and the room was full. So you look at the market cap, you look at the energy that's being put into it. And, thankfully, unlike Hanna, I'm not an academic, so I don't have to take an academic sensibility to the promises that people are making in the space, which would be frustrating, right? Because people sort of invent all sorts of claims around it. However, I would posit that is not a exclusive to blockchain technology. It's basically any startup ecosystem that you find. I don't think AI has less hype and less inflated claims than the blockchain space. It's even, I dare say, seeped into our political conversations to some degree or another. So I understand the point, but I don't think that's the metric by which I would measure whether something's a success or failure. Rather, I'd say how many people are actually working on this industry, how much value has been created in it, and how much utility are people drawn out of it. And on those metrics, I think it's pretty clear that it's been a success thus far. Not every blockchain, most are not useful, but the few that have emerged or have really emerged, Bitcoin being the primary example.
So what do you think?
I'll make 2 points.
Okay.
First one is, even though the name suggests it is about technologies, blockchains are not just about technologies, right? So the protocols underlying blockchains are about the creation of assets, the creation of value, and how assets change hands. That is inherently an activity that belongs in financial markets and a highly regulated market. And one of the reasons why you see a lot of the actors involved in this space coming together and coming closer to regulators, even to ask for more clarity in terms of regulation. And blockchain technologies and the consensus protocols, for example, are about governance. And if you think about governance in financial markets, it's about who does what. Right. And so this ethos that came originally as a decentralization, distribution, and trustlessness, which is at the heart of the original thinking, is again about maps very well into the traditional financial markets. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's also been brought much closer to regulators, which brings me to the second point. What is a bug and what is a feature of these systems, right? With the technological, with the consensus protocols in this governance, the scalability issues are actually a feature. You do need a little bit of that friction that comes with trying to Byzantine fault tolerance, get transactions to make it into the blockchain in a way that is trustless. So it is a feature of the system. It is not a problem. It is not a bug. But I'll push back on something that that was mentioned already about this notion of trustlessness, which comes with this idea of the original thinking again of the notion that intermediaries are inherently a bug of the traditional system. And I will claim and I will argue that there are intermediaries that play an important economic function. And this is one of the reasons why some of these same functions and same intermediaries have been emerging even in crypto and DeFi. And again, intermediaries such as dealers and market makers, they are familiar for the traditional markets and also emerging now. And so because there is an economic function to these intermediaries and they're not just a bug in the system. Of course, we can come back to some of the intermediaries that rise from some of the inefficiencies that we have in the technologies that are not in the blockchain space. But maybe we can come back to that later, Chris.
Yeah, I'll then pass, with that, I'll pass it back to Julapa. I mean, I guess what you're hearing from Team DC is there are different kinds of things you may want to optimize on. And when you look at blockchains, that's a product of those kinds of design choices and features and use cases. And you have to sort of figure out, sounds very familiar to what we heard from Dominic earlier about AI and choosing those use cases. And we're also making a critique about what the current TradFi system is in terms of the usefulness of intermediaries. So we'll just pass it back to you, Julapa, for round two.
Philly team. So far, what do you think? You think there is some different technology that could deliver more effectively the goal of Web3? And if you compare blockchain with Bitcoin blockchain, which you are very familiar with Bitcoin, Bob, so do you think it is a failure or is it a success? So if it is a 10 for success and 1 for failure, how would you rate blockchain and Bitcoin blockchain? Many questions, but...
Sure. It'd be very hard to refer to a technology that was built in 2008 that has become an asset class at least recognized by BlackRock to be a failure. That would be very hard to do. You also have be broken, which is a testament to the cryptographic proofs and the Byzantine fault-tolerant work in Bitcoin. What I question with Bitcoin is not where it is, but where it's going. And one challenge with Bitcoin is becoming increasingly centralized. So as a decentralized project that's aiming to have censorship-resistant sovereign form of value, it is becoming increasingly centralized. And right now you have a very large amount of existing Bitcoin under 1 or 2 institutions. That leads to a lot of challenges. Bitcoin remains heavily full of bugs, and it needs to upgrade every version of C++, and it needs developers working on it. And there is a very small pool of developers that work on Bitcoin, and they are not terribly well funded. And so I think Bitcoin right now, I would put very high. Where it's going in the next 10 years, I don't know. But it is not gold, and I think several people have said that. Gold is an element. Bitcoin is an ongoing software project that could go in a lot of directions. 21 million Bitcoins is a choice of developers. It could be more than that where they choose to do so. And those developers are not terribly well funded these days, despite the size of the asset class. I think about that a lot for someone who deeply cares about that protocol. Blockchain itself, I think credibility is important for the industry. And understanding and saying what it can do, and whether, say, for example, blocks are necessary to, say, move central bank money or commercial bank money. Is Byzantine fault-tolerant work necessary for central bank or commercial bank money? Are good questions. But you mentioned Web3, which I think is different. Web3 is different. Web3 is the idea that persons can have agency over their own data in a censorship-resistant or sovereign way, and I think that's a very important question. Currently, the internet runs, and one thing we're working on in our company, currently the internet runs on a data bartering exchange. Meta gives you free services, Amazon gives you free services. In exchange, they get your data. There is no way to move value in a manner to exist on the open internet, or I think as Coinbase has termed on-chain, in a manner that provides a value exchange. I think there is a very good possibility that some key tenets of blockchain might change that. So Web 2 is effectively you give your data to Meta and they sell your ads. This is something I think needs to be looked at and what this technology might be able to do. But you need to be able to move value at millions of transactions a second at around 100 to 200 milliseconds of latency. There is no blockchain in existence right now that comes close to that. And that's what we're working on at our company. That's something that came out of Project Hamilton and out of the work on our team did at Circle, is can you move, smart contract executions at millions of transactions a second at sub 1 second latency so that you can actually have a value-based internet and not an ad-based internet. That's what blockchain hasn't achieved, and I've yet to see when I say blockchain, I mean a Byzantine fault-tolerant network that orders transactions in a global order of blocks to get to that number. And that's what we need to get to fix that bartering arrangement we've all kind of succumbed ourselves to with Meta and Amazon and Google, and that's what's needed. And I don't see blockchain solving that problem.
All right, Hanna.
So I do agree that Bitcoin itself is pretty much a success. It did show that we can achieve digital money and a system that is resistant to double spending. Does not mean that it's foolproof. Does not mean that every time we would just apply the same protocol, it would result in the same security, because it's not just protocol. There is a set of incentive in the whole ecosystem. However, it did achieve that. It created a new asset class. At the same time, it did not become the money that it was envisioned to be. So again, I'm going to go back to what was promised. It did not deliver. It became more or less the store of value. At the same time, it does have shortcomings. There is, Chris talked about centralization in holdings of Bitcoin. There's centralization in mining of Bitcoin, in maintaining, and centralization in developing the protocol and maintaining the protocol. So there is centralization. There is a huge cost associated with mining Bitcoin. This is the cost of electricity. This is the pollution cost. There's a lot of externality that is needed to maintain and keep the system secure. This is difficulty. Now, when it comes to broader blockchain, I think this is less of a success story, in the sense that I mentioned before. Once we get outside of cryptocurrencies, it is no longer a self-sufficient, self-contained system the way Bitcoin is. Now, if we want to go out and do supply chain on blockchain, if we want to do contracts on blockchain, if we want to do DeFi on blockchain, we need to get information from outside. We need to interact in and out with the real world. It actually favors a lot of centralization that results in value capture as well. So it doesn't really deliver on the same decentralization that we expect from Web3. And I don't think that this is going to be delivered in, if anything, if we're thinking about permissionless blockchains, we're going to see the value recapture and re-centralization, but now without knowing who is capturing this value and where it's going. Now, at the same time, DeFi did, so blockchains and systems like DeFi, they did create new value classes, new markets. We are yet to see whether these markets will be viable and large, whether they will be large like video game market and industry, or whether they will be relatively smaller like baseball cards industry. Here I'm kind of thinking about NFTs as well. And we will see how secure and safe they are. We will see the test of it. Now, to speak to other technologies that could achieve the promise of Web3, and the kind of decentralization and thinking about where we want to bear the cost of decentralization, I think that we should look at advanced distributed database development, at federated systems, where we can achieve enough of the decentralization without bearing the full cost of full decentralization. And in fact, these systems have been so effective in achieving this almost decentralization that they are called permissioned blockchains. Right, so kind of goes back to, if it works, let's call it a blockchain, but it's not necessarily the same system as permissionless blockchain.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Because we're hearing. I'll let the Oracle speak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So first of all, go to oracle.com/blockchain. You'll see all the reference stories. You'll see our official, all the answers there, because I want to spend it on the Web3. So I think Oracle's blockchain and what we've done in it is sheer innovation. I'm very proud of our teams and what they've done with the kernel. But you go and check it out. You go and see it yourself. From Web3, I love Web3. I think it's a fantastic notion. I think that we are 100% going to see your data comes with you and it's portable, and then you plug that into the applications. The problem with Web3 at the moment is the proliferation of standards. We need like a few big techs to step up and to agree. We can't have the startups pushing it. It won't work. The one problem with seeing blockchain is not with the technology. It's with the business and the lack of ability to last 18 months on venture capital. The amount of companies we deal with that come to us with their investment in blockchain and they need to scale it. I would say the business is the number one threat. Not technologically. On Project Hamilton, we collaborated, right? If you look at the unified ledger, 5 million TPS for BIS, unified ledger. Any blockchain doing more than 3,000?
More than 3,000.
How many? Okay, 4,000. Yep. All right. So there's a gap. There's a huge gap. Blockchain's not the problem. It's not the problem. It's one of 50 different types from there. The problem is, how do we keep all the security and the availability to scale this so the unified ledger becomes a reality from there?
All right. Well, I did notice, Team Philadelphia, that no one actually offered the rating. I think maybe Bob did. But to Bob and Weave on Julapa's question there about what number you would assign.
Oh, Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. I'm like 9 or 10 out of 10. I love Bitcoin. Blockchain itself as an industry, as technology, it's kind of a well-marketed two-phase commit technology. It's two-phase commit's great. It's 7 or 8, but but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. All right,
Hanna, I will give 8 to Bitcoin and about 4 to blockchain.
Okay, interesting.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna compliment my other speakers because I genuinely believe it. You mentioned two-phase commit. The biggest problem I've seen is the attack on bridges, and I'm a cybersecurity guy. I'm your last resort. I'm seeing it over and over. I'm seeing spoofing on permissioned and permissionless. The ingenuity is amazing from there. Huge difference. We implemented two-phase commit rather than bridges.
Oracle. We need a number.
Oracle. What kind of number? Go to oracle.com/blockchain. Get the official.
Okay, great. All right,
Get the official numbers.
So with that clarity, we're going to jump here to Team DC for a second. All right, you've heard a lot from Team Philadelphia. Let's talk a little bit about alternative technologies, other available paths which they've identified, and then what it means from the perspective of both blockchain and Bitcoin. And also, I will, since they are talking about gold, and we have someone from the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank for central banks, and you guys know a little bit about gold. Maybe we'll just sort of start there, and in terms of your general impressions, alternative technologies, and obviously Bitcoin as store of value.
I'll piggyback a little bit on
Sure.
on what was discussed in Philly, and on how we have seen some of the benefits of emerging from this discussion of blockchain technologies. Of course, this is the idea of a shared database amongst different types of actors, of different types of assets. And this is at the center and at the heart of this proposal of the unified ledger that was just mentioned, right? So it is about taking this advantage, the advantages of programmability, of composability, in a shared execution environment and shared data environment that contains the assets that I mentioned in the beginning. So there's the notion of the creation of value being tied to the safest settlement asset, which is central bank money. And so this is at the heart of this concept of the unified ledger that the BS has proposed. But it is also the acknowledgement that there is this opportunity for public and private partnership. And this is why we mentioned the central bank money being at the heart, but this understanding that commercial bank money plays together with central bank money as it does today in the traditional financial system. But this notion of having a programmable platform, I think it's something really important and central to this vision, and something that we have been exploring. Again, in Project Agora, that I'm sure most of you are familiar, trying to explore the take advantage of this shared and eliminate some of the inefficiencies that come with the siloed traditional systems that we have today. The two-phase commit, think about two-phase commit amongst various databases that are all spread over a cross-border payment chain. So it's like the initial, the bank initiating a payment, the central bank in the middle, the correspondent bank, the one. So it's a number of two-phase commits that have to happen, and all of that synchronized. And so I think there is this opportunity to bring all of that into a programmable platform. And maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah. I have, we were very fortunate even last year to have Yunseong talk about the unified ledger, and we can get back to that a little bit later. But your score, yeah.
Are you going to put me in that position?
I'm absolutely going to put you in that position. Score for Bitcoin and blockchain.
Blockchain without the notion of governance and the aspects that I mentioned again, the blockchain as just the technological aspect of shared, I think that's, let's say 8, because it does need improvement, right? Bitcoin and I'm going to use the two-handed economist, right? On the one hand, there are the technological.
Try being a lawyer.
Yeah, well, there are the technological advantages that came from that, but and I'll tie that to what Hanna mentioned is. It is, if you think about the electronic cash peer-to-peer system, which would be about just exchange of money in terms of means of payment, it has become more that has become store of value. And the thing about store of value, and some of the colleagues here have worked on this, some of the yes colleagues have shown that it's store of value, but whales have made profit at the expense of krill. So it's like the largest
So your
investor.
score
And
is...
so on the one hand, it is one thing. On the other hand, it is the other thing. So I'll be in the middle. Can I give it a 5?
They're wily, these BIS economists. They're wily. Okay, Patrick.
With both of my hands, I will say that Bitcoin is a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
I mean, it's really hard to argue with something that has went from nothing to $1 trillion, right? Like, calling that a failure is, as Bob said, like, I mean, if anybody wants to have that debate, happy to have it with you. And on the technology side, it was a clear step forward in the innovation side. And you're right, it's not the blockchain technology, which is really just a component of what made Bitcoin successful. The innovation was Nakamoto consensus, which is the governance layer, right? That's clearly a 10 out of 10. It was a brand new, innovative thing that was a computer science breakthrough. So for blockchain, sure, I think it's a little lower. Maybe it's a 7 out of 10. But again, when you see how much activity is happening out there, and when we talk about things like, well, okay, how do we build a ledger to make it like it's a utility that allows people to move money around the world? Well, it's been built. It's called stablecoins, right? It exists right now, and everyone in this room can do it immediately. You can send value from point to point anywhere in the world on your own terms right now, right? And that's across multiple different blockchains. In fact, the only blockchain that doesn't have a stablecoin on it that I'm aware of, I mean, I'm sure there's a whole long tail of them, but the main one is Bitcoin, right? So keep that in mind when we're thinking about that. Look at the numbers, like follow the actual business, right? Stablecoin use in remittance and things like that has done nothing but grow over time and stands to do nothing but continue to grow. And I think where this conversation comes down to is it's a matter of philosophy, right? If I believe in a system that is open, accessible to me as like an autonomous person, I autonomously can like access at the core layer all the functions of it privately, then the trade-off in terms of cost and speed and all that for the disintermediation you get with a blockchain is 100% worth it. If you don't want to live in that world and you're like, I really want people to go through a bank, right? I want people to go through a financial intermediary for every aspect of their financial lives. If that's the world you believe in, absolutely, blockchain is not going to be for you. It's not something you're going to want to adopt or have anything to do with. So I think ultimately that's the conversation. It's about what's the world you want to live in, like in the future. If you want to live in one where there's like open access, privacy, and you have autonomy over your financial life, then Bitcoin, blockchain technologies, other decentralized technologies that are not blockchain technologies, that's sort of the path forward. If you don't believe in that vision, and there are people who don't, and that's fine, then like focus your energy on I don't know, banking law, Chris?
Well, Julapa, we have less than 5 minutes left before we have to switch to the FDIC vice chair. Maybe, if you don't mind, maybe we could have everyone on your side give us like their 30-second, is there anything that blockchains can do, sort of following off of Patrick's sort of observations there, is there anything that blockchains can do that Web 2 can't? And then we'll end up here, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good, yes. Can I also ask just one more question based on Bob's description of the rating of blockchain and Bitcoin? So Bitcoin definitely is much more successful than the regular blockchain, but is it really dependent on the limited supply of 21 million, and that can be changed? You said that could be changed, and the code actually has been being revised. Is it a problem?
It could be if the core engineers are not well supported and well funded. If say there was an attack on Coinbase, which has a massive quantity of the world's Bitcoin supply, there could be a demand to fork it, to reorder the Bitcoin blockchain. I think that's a very considerable threat to seeing Bitcoin as an asset class. So yeah, it's all about making sure that ecosystem is well supported, and you avoid concentrations in that ecosystem.
Okay. Now, since Chris's question about, is there anything else that?
Yeah, I mean, Pat Merck and I have known each other for a long time, so we're probably talking similar books. The alchemy that whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was a really incredible breakthrough in computer science, and it's shown. Since then, I think we've had some really interesting work in smart contracts, in composable smart contracts and smart contract execution. To be sure, smart contracts are not required for a blockchain. You can run a smart contract on a Postgres database. But I think that the big thing in my mind, it has incentivized millions of people around the world to learn computer science, and incentivized millions of people in the world to think differently about money. And people being smarter is a good thing. People learning more is a good thing, and that's a good incentive model in my mind.
Yeah, quickly.
So yeah. I think that with blockchain, well, if well implemented, it offers more censorship resistance than any other technology. At the same time, we need to think whether we really want censorship resistance and whether we want to bear the cost of censorship resistance, that is directly running the system and the consequence of somebody stealing our money and so on. At the same time, I would say that the big impact of Bitcoin and blockchain and the hype around it is the catalyst for innovation, even if the result of innovation will not be permissionless blockchains, to the point that Chris brought.
Do we have time
we have
some more time?
Everyone has like 20 seconds at this point.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
Okay, I've got no problem with Bitcoin at all. I'm a cryptologist, an SA cryptologist. I think we need to get to post-quantum, and I've used quantum technologies for a decade, cryptography as soon as possible based on the NIST guidelines. I think the cryptography is a serious risk from there. So no problem with Bitcoin. With blockchain, it's evolving into a data platform. You're going to hear data platform. Right, it's going to be merged with AI. It's the transaction model between the blockchain and the database, based on our Project Hamilton work, sir, is excellent and passes all the DoD IL level 6 impact, which is the highest level of accreditation in our environment.
Okay, back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Shared platform with the proper safeguards.
Team DC efficiency. I love that. Okay, yes.
The Bitcoin Renaissance? No, that's one. Two, I'll say, I mean, I think that the highest and best use is to create open public financial markets that's an market infrastructure that everybody can use in a way that just doesn't exist currently.
All right. Okay, Team Philadelphia, thanks so much for your time. We're about to transition back, and Team DC as well. Let's give everybody a big